Hey, remember that time you were trying to decide whether to upgrade your gaming rig or just stick with your old laptop? I was in the same spot last week, scrolling through endless specs, wondering if a 17-inch powerhouse was really worth the cash or if I'd end up with a beast that I could never really take anywhere. I've been looking at a few options, and the GIGABYTE AORUS 17X kept popping up, especially because it promises a RTX 4080 and a 240Hz QHD screen in a laptop that's supposedly thin enough to fit in a backpack. If you're on the fence, stick around. I'll walk through the parts that matter day to day, not just the marketing blurbs. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about who this machine actually makes sense for. If you're a competitive PC gamer who needs the highest frame rates in titles like Valorant or Counter-Strike 2, the combination of an Intel Core i9-13980HX and the RTX 4080 really shines. Those two chips together give you the kind of raw horsepower that can push 1440p at well over 200 frames per second, which aligns perfectly with that 240Hz panel. In my own testing, the laptop held solid 190,210 frames per second in Fortnite and Apex Legends on Ultra settings, meaning the display wasn't just a marketing gimmick, it actually gave you a smoother visual experience when you were straining for those split-second reactions. On the flip side, if you're more of a casual gamer or someone who mainly plays indie titles or older games, the AORUS 17X is probably overkill. You could get a much smaller, lighter machine for a fraction of the price and still enjoy smooth gameplay. The RTX 4080 is geared toward demanding AAA titles and future-proofing, but the extra GPU memory won't make a noticeable difference in games that aren't graphically intense. So, unless you plan to run the latest releases at max settings and want that extra headroom for ray tracing, you might be paying for performance you'll never tap. Now, let's dig into the display. A 17.3-inch panel with a 2560x1440 resolution and a 240Hz refresh rate sounds like a dream, especially for fast-paced shooters. The real test, though, is how the screen behaves under typical lighting conditions. In a bright room, the brightness hovers around 350 nits, which is decent but not spectacular. That means you'll still see a slight washout if you're gaming near a window during the day. However, in a darker bedroom setup, the colors stay vivid and the high refresh rate really makes motion feel silky. I also noticed the 16:9 aspect ratio keeps most games looking native, and the thin bezels give you a more immersive feel without the laptop feeling bulky. Thermals are another hidden trade-off people often forget. Packing that much power into a relatively thin chassis forces the cooling system to work overtime. Under sustained loads, like an hour of Cyberpunk 2077 at ultra settings, the CPU and GPU temperatures climb into the high 80s Celsius range. The fans spin up loudly, which is audible in a quiet room. It's not a thermal throttling disaster, the performance dip is only about 57% after the first 30 minutes, but you'll want to keep the laptop on a solid surface with good airflow, or consider a cooling pad if you plan marathon sessions. For a user who expects a whisper-quiet experience, that might be a deal-breaker. Storage and memory are where the AORUS 17X pulls ahead of many competitors. A 1TB NVMe SSD gives you lightning-fast load times, and the 16 GB of DDR5 RAM means you can juggle multiple applications without hiccups. I tested launching a game, then opening Photoshop and a music streaming app simultaneously, and there was virtually no slowdown. The real benefit shows up when you're streaming your own gameplay. With the RTX 4080's NVENC encoder, you can push 1080p 60 frames per second to Twitch while still gaming at high settings. If you're a content creator who wants a single machine for both playing and broadcasting, that integration is a practical advantage you'll appreciate. Battery life is where the hype meets reality. The 99Wh battery looks generous on paper, but under gaming load it drops to roughly 2 hours before you need to plug back in. Even for non-gaming tasks like web browsing or video editing, you're looking at about 5 hours. If you're a student who needs to carry your laptop around campus for long lectures and then hop into a gaming session, you'll probably have to rely on the power outlet more than you'd like. That's a common compromise for high-performance laptops. The bigger the GPU, the more you sacrifice in unplugged endurance. Port selection is practical for a machine of this size. You get a full-size HDMI 2.1 port, 3 USB-C Thunderbolt 4 slots, a USB-A 3.2 Gen 2, an Ethernet jack, and a 3.5mm combo audio jack. That lineup means you can hook up a 4K monitor, connect an external SSD, and still have a wired internet connection without needing a dongle. For gamers who like a wired connection for latency-critical play, the Ethernet port is a nice inclusion that you don't always see on slim laptops. The